The March 25th meeting of the Edmond City Council for purposes of an emergency meeting is now called to order. I want to welcome everyone here that's listening. Today, the purpose of this meeting it's an emergency meeting, is to update the emergency declaration approved by the City Council last week on Wednesday, March 18th in a special meeting. Notice was posted last night following the governor's declaration at 2 o'clock yesterday during his news conference. We discussed this emergency declaration on Monday night at a regular city council meeting. He even suggested that maybe we might probably need to have another meeting next Monday. Well, things have changed, folks, and directly related to the governor's new emergency declaration and changes that are pending with the Oklahoma City. This is an open meeting. The public is invited to attend. That would be a challenge and a health risk in this emergency time frame. We have a new room arrangement this morning for the council chambers, and we're applying the latest guidance from CDC to the emergency meeting of the Edmond City Council. As you can see, we really don't have anyone from the public here right now attending, but we are trying to accommodate them should they wish to attend and people wish to make comments. We are trying to maintain a space of 6 feet. That's why the dais is, we've removed the city clerk, the city manager, and city attorney, but they're right outside, just below in the audience for today. To facilitate a public meeting, the city is broadcasting this meeting live. We hope that maybe if there are citizens in the foyer just outside the chamber, they can hear and see and view what's going on. And when the opportunity comes, they will have the opportunity to speak. I will first ask our city attorney, city manager to come forward first and just briefly give us an update on where we stand city-wise with our services for the community.
Okay, good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Just a couple of items that people are asking about, and we thought it would be helpful for you. Our park areas, we're closing the restrooms today is one example of something that we're doing. Our playgrounds are open as of right now. We are sanitizing the playground equipment for the bigger playgrounds as long as we continue to have the materials to do that, which at this point we don't know, but we are continuing to do that. The tennis center is open just for outdoor courts at this point. The golf course is something we talked about quite a bit. We are still open at this time, and we did get an informal recommendation from the Golf Course Advisory Board last night to basically encouraged us to stay open if we possibly could. Brian and his staff are taking some steps out there to maximize the safety precautions that we need to do, and in terms of how many can play in a group and so on. As one example of that, I think we're going to be looking at 2 carts to a foursome, but only 1 person per cart. So if you have 4 people playing, then 2 people can ride, 2 people will walk. So, but we're trying to do those things just to give you an idea of what some of the other courses in the area are doing. Oklahoma City had no direction had been given yet when we checked this morning, and that kind of reflects how these things are constantly evolving. Tulsa County courses are open. Tulsa Municipal, there's no direction given yet in terms of what they're doing too. Norman, the Westwood Park course is open. So at this point, we're still open with that. And all of what I just mentioned, I have to stress that all of what we're looking at is constant or subject to constant evaluation and change. That's where we are at this particular moment. Later in the day, we may have things that change that, and we're going to be ready to adjust accordingly. So I think everyone understands. I know you do, but I think it's important for the people in the community to understand that this constantly changes. And in fact, we've got another meeting of our internal staff basically as soon as this meeting is over to see where we stand with that. So this is a constantly evolving and changing situation. One thing I also would like to mention is that our overriding goal, as we see it, is to continue to provide services while minimizing the exposure to both the public and our employees. And we're trying to use that as part of the guide in terms of what we look at. And if people have questions, which we know there will be, we're getting tons of emails about eligible businesses, essential, non-essential. All those things are going to generate a lot of questions. If people have questions about updates to the proclamation, we ask them to call 359-4500. That's our general city manager's office number. Our point of contact for the city will be Andy Conyers in our office. His email is andy.conyers@edmondok.com. And we also will have this on the City of Edmond Facebook page as well. So we're trying to utilize all the resources we have to keep our citizens informed. And with that, that's all I had to talk about. Do you have any questions that you might want to ask?
You might run over that we have essentially closed all the city offices, correct?
Yes, well, we've closed it to public access. We've restricted public access. And so for people that want to come to one of our buildings, basically, there'll be a note on the door, there'll be a number there that they can call, and if they call that number, then we'll have somebody from inside the building continue to do that. Just as another note, we have implemented a variety of remote work plans for various departments that we have. Our people are trying to adjust those to the needs and what they can do within their own restrictive operations, but we've done quite a bit of that as well. We'll continue to do that too, but again, that is also a constantly evolving thing. We're just in that reality now. So
Well, we appreciate all the work you've done and all the adjustments.
okay, thank you.
Larry, did you mention fishing boats on Arcadia Lake?
I have not heard anything on that. We may have that by the time you leave. I haven't heard anything on that lately.
To my
So that I
knowledge.
don't know.
I've talked to some people about there are boats out on the water.
Well, I think there are,
He's got an answer for that question.
good. Very good.
Thank you.
Good question. Thanks.
If I heard it right, you were asking about Arcadia Lake. And at this point, we're still open. I became aware of a situation this morning, and we're looking into that people at the fishing dock maybe aren't practicing good social distancing, and we will enforce that, or we'll close the dock, one or the other. I mean, people have to understand that we're serious about this. So at this point, I think people are looking for places to social distance away from other people, and the lake might be a good place to do that. But at this point, we're still open at the lake.
And boats are permitted on the lake?
Yes, yeah. We only allow 100 out there, 150, I guess, out there at any given time. There's plenty of room to keep social distance.
So I can go fishing this weekend?
You can go fishing, but just stay 6 feet apart if you're on the dock. We may have to put tape down, I guess. I don't know.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Next, I think it would be appropriate for us to get a review of what the governor's edict was yesterday. We now have it, it was published last night. And Mr. Murdoch, would you kindly update us on the official version after the press conference?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an emergency meeting pursuant to Title 25 Oklahoma Statutes, Section 3045 and 31113. An emergency meeting is necessary to respond immediately to the national, state, and local emergency currently existing as a result of the COVID-19 and the City of Edmond's declaration of emergency dated March 18th, 2020, and to prevent injury to persons. That's the reason we're meeting on an emergency basis this morning. As we mentioned, the governor of the state of Oklahoma had a press conference yesterday afternoon in which he issued an executive order. It was titled the Fourth Amendment Executive Order. Had a lot of information in it related to the state as a whole. but of particular interest to the 19 counties in Oklahoma in which there are active COVID-19 cases. He issued some things, some directives regarding adults over the age of 65 and people of any age who have serious underlying medical conditions, collectively referred to as vulnerable individuals, shall stay in their home or place of residence except for working in a critical infrastructure sector, as more particularly described herein, and the conduct of essential errands. He went on to define essential errands as those errands which are critical to everyday life and includes obtaining medication, groceries, gasoline, and visiting medical providers. The vulnerable population is encouraged to use delivery and/or curbside services whenever available. Further went on to state that Oklahomans and medical providers in Oklahoma shall postpone all elective surgeries, minor medical procedures, and non-emergency dental procedures until April 7th of 2020. Further stated, and relevant to some of the things that Mr. Stevens particularly mentioned, social gatherings of more than 10 people are prohibited statewide. Businesses within a critical infrastructure sector, as more particularly described herein, shall take all reasonable steps necessary to comply with this order and protect their employees and workers and patrons. Effective at 11:59 p.m. Today, all businesses not identified as being within a critical infrastructure sector as defined by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and located in a county experiencing community spread of COVID-19 as identified by the Oklahoma State Department of Health on its website shall close. Additional sectors may be designated as critical by executive order or memorandum. Nothing in this provision shall prevent restaurants and bars from providing pickup, curbside, and delivery. This shall be effective until April 16th of 2020. Visitors are prohibited from entering and visiting patients and residents at nursing homes, long-term care facilities, and retirement homes. Then last night, a little bit thereafter, an executive department memorandum was issued by the governor, which added a list of critical infrastructure sectors identified by the United States Department of Homeland Security, added some additions to the healthcare, public health, law enforcement, public safety, first responders, and other community-based government operations and essential functions. I've also heard that there was some information on social media related to perhaps the expansion and reference to an additional document related to critical infrastructure as established by the federal government. So pursuant to that, as you recall, it has been our goal to be in step with our neighbor, the city of Oklahoma City. Yesterday afternoon, following the governor's press conference, Mayor Holt indicated that the city of Oklahoma City would be issuing a proclamation which would mirror and complement the governor's executive order. As of the 15 minutes ago, when I checked the website for Oklahoma City, they hadn't published their proclamation. So I can only assume that what they will come up with will be very similar to what the governor had. To that end, I placed in front of your place a revised declaration of emergency. As you recall, we did one on March 18th. This revised is I made a few tweaks, wherein I made a reference specifically in the fourth paragraph of the governor's announced the Safer at Home Order, Executive Department, Fourth Amendment Executive Order 2020-07 for the state and for the 19 counties. I also made reference to that order throughout our document, and near the bottom of the page begin a recitation of the conditions that I previously indicated to you, each of you earlier. Then I began at the bottom of the page 2, adding the additional information that was provided by the governor in his executive memorandum related to health care, public health, law enforcement, public safety, first responders, and other community-based government operations and essential functions. In the next paragraph, again, on page 3 near the lower part of the document, I added this paragraph. It is further declared in order that any subsequent executive orders and executive memorandums issued by the governor modifying the conditions set out in this declaration are hereby adopted and incorporated by reference as if fully set out herein. The intent of that paragraph was if there are additional explanations, orders, memorandums, which I believe there will be, specifically in trying to identify and define these critical services, we would not need to constantly come back and add additional language. Those will be incorporated as the governor makes those changes. I continued on in our document with regard to our statement that we previously made regarding discontinuing water and utility services and telling people to stay 3 feet apart when they're on city link. So that's where we are now. I would tell you that I would like to have had Oklahoma City's declaration and proclamation before we met this morning, but that's not possible. I don't envision it would be substantially different. We have our own community. My recommendation is that we not deviate from the governor's orders and proclamations. Again, I think that's going to be a moving target as it relates to the definition of critical services. There's a lot of documents that are out there. Some of you and I have even talked about those, that different cities have done different things. And so I think the governor is going to be responding to people as they call and try to work through this. But the most important thing, obviously, I think is to follow the terms of the governor as it's set out. And I believe that we cannot be less restrictive. We could perhaps be more restrictive, but I do not believe we could be less restrictive. And that's why I recommend that we incorporate those provisions. Be glad to answer any questions.
I do.
Yes, sir.
I've been contacted by a funeral director here in town, and they specifically asked to be added as a first responder so they can have access to PPE equipment. Is that in our venue to add to first responders?
At this point, I don't recommend that we do that. I think that would be a question that would be appropriate to ask the governor, and the governor's office could perhaps give us additional clarification on this point. I think that we expect our citizens, like the governor of the state of Oklahoma and the mayor of Oklahoma City and other mayors in our state, will expect all our citizens to do their very best to comply with these provisions. And I understand that there may be some gray areas and some uncertainty, but we'll do our very best to try to assist them in answering those questions. But I also have had similar emails indicating add us. And,
right.
And I really think the governor has set the pattern here as to what we should do and how we should follow it. And I would hesitate for us to deviate from that.
Any other thoughts on this?
It's pretty clear.
I want to commend the governor for stepping forward. He's received some criticism for not being very specific and leaving it up to the cities to plot their own way on this particular thing. But I thought the governor really did step forward yesterday and committed our state to do whatever is necessary to mitigate the impact of the virus. I note this morning that the city of New York City apparently has 3,000 people that have been hospitalized for this virus. And that's really scary. And that happened within a short period of time, very short period of time. So I understand how their medical facilities or medical resources are being overwhelmed and how desperate things might be in that area. So keep those folks in your prayers. And if you have any friends from New York City, have them self-quarantine. Anyway, it's a difficult situation. Any other comments? If you had, is there any questions about any of the restrictions here?
One thing, we still have CityLink included in our declaration, and I'm assuming that's going to continue as long as essential employees are needed
They
for
have
transportation.
It's my understanding we've made a route change to Oklahoma City. We've eliminated one route to
Okay.
Oklahoma City.
That's the
We still
100.
have two. So we're still, I don't imagine it was full,
Right.
so.
We're still providing the essential services. As the city of Edmond is still providing the services that we need, as Mr. Stevens indicated. We will continue to keep you updated if any changes that occur from the governor's office. Keep you advised of what Oklahoma City is doing. Be available, obviously, as we have been, to any of your questions. It's moving. So
It's moving.
Very well. Sort of surprised when we were here talking about this Monday night. Had no idea we'd be here today for an emergency meeting. I think an emergency meeting in the history of our community is unprecedented in recent times. And I'll just simply leave it at that. Is there a motion, council, to adopt the recommendations of our
Before we
city
do that,
attorney?
I might just remind us that we have a tentative special city council meeting next Monday.
That's correct.
At 5:30, which we may or may not have anything to talk about, and if not, we can cancel that Monday morning, but it's at least there if we need it.
Do we need to file that Friday?
I'll have it posted. It'll be in.
Okay, okay.
With that, I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Council, if you would, please cast your vote. This revised emergency declaration has been approved. Thank you very much, council, and thank you very much, Mr. Murdoch, and thank you, Larry.
Move to adjourn.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Or vote. Thank you all very much.